Welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm Kathleen Walter. With us now on the phone is the chairman and editor-in-chief of Forbes Media and former GOP presidential candidate, Mr. Steve Forbes. And Mr. Forbes, as always, thank you so much for being with us today.
We're looking forward to it. Thank you.
Well, the Obamacare website cost taxpayers in excess of $300 million. Secretary Sebelius is defending her role in the Obamacare rollout. Representative Paul Ryan and other Republicans say Sebelius should step down. Who, in your view, is to blame for the Obamacare rollout disaster?
It starts at the top with the president, and then everyone in the chain of command, including Secretary Sebelius. Everyone knew that there are going to be problems, and something as complex as this, you have to bird dog it every step of the way. And clearly, no one was in charge. They just let a contract and just hoped things would work out. So it's incompetence from top to bottom.
Should Obamacare be delayed? Doesn't that help President Obama? And wouldn't it be better for voters to see the full throttle of the law before the 2014 election?
I think he should postpone it, and I hope the Republicans now hammer this issue as never before in terms of putting the individual mandate off. Everyone understands if you're giving business, especially big business, and these specially favored unions, pet unions, exemptions, why not the American people? And I think the longer they try to dawdle around on it or punt on it, the worse it's going to get. Instead of 6 weeks, they should do 12 months and ultimately forever.
Mr. Forbes, the president has arbitrarily changed the individual mandate deadline now to March and recently delayed the employer mandate by a year. The law gives him no authority to change dates like this. Are you concerned about this effort by the president to usurp congressional powers?
He's been doing it for 5 years now and ruling by decree when he can't get it through Congress. You see that with the EPA and other agencies, the FTC, making things up as they go along. In the National Labor Relations Board, you see egregious examples of ignoring courts, ignoring the law. So why should he start obeying the law now? And the key is to challenge him on it. But in the meantime, if he thinks he can play dictator and do things just on his own whim, then we should push for the individual mandate, not to be put off for a few weeks, but be put off. If it's good enough to be put off for business, it's good enough for the American people.
Turning to the recent outcome of the government shutdown, which centered around the fight over Obamacare, were you surprised that Republicans gave in?
No, they, I think, really, to be blunt, led with the wrong foot on this one. They should have led with the individual mandate, with Congress eating its own cooking. That is, no subsidies for Congress. If it's the American people have to go through this, Congress should as well. And perhaps do away with the device tax and a couple of other items. But if they had led with the individual mandate and eat your own cooking, I think the president would have been in far worse shape today, and he would have caved, and it wouldn't be for 6 weeks. It would be for at least 12 months like he did for big business.
And another debt ceiling deal looms for some time between February and July. Do you think that we'll face another shutdown? And as a longtime advocate of a flat tax, is a flat tax something the GOP should put on the table?
The GOP should put it on the table and recognize with this president you're not going to get a deal on anything unless you do everything he wants, like another big tax increase, which is not going to happen. So the Republicans should see it as an opportunity to set the stage for the 2014 elections and, most importantly, a mandate for 2016. On the debt ceiling side, why not start advocating that instead of the debt ceiling, replace the thing with that spending can't go above a certain percent of GDP. And if it does, then congressional pay gets docked. I think that would focus minds wonderfully.
As you're aware, President Obama is nominating Janet Yellen to succeed Ben Bernanke as the next Federal Reserve Chairman. How do you view her, and when do you expect the Fed will begin its tapering of quantitative easing?
The Fed has found out that once you do something like this, it's very hard to unwind, and she's going to be under a lot of pressure to do it. Both she and Bernanke are astronomers who still believe that the sun revolves around the earth. And so she is in total sympathy with what Bernanke has done. but I think she's going to be under a lot more pressure than Bernanke has been to find a way. How do you undo this thing? That's some of the question the Republicans should push hard when they have confirmation hearings. And they should also hit her on things like, in terms of printing money, how is that different from counterfeiting? You know, counterfeiting's illegal, but printing money is a way to stimulate the economy. Why not have everyone do it?
Investor Jim Rogers says that the next financial crisis will be much worse than in the past because the level of debt is so much higher, with every country increasing its debt at the same time. Do you agree with Rogers, and when do you see the next financial crisis occurring?
Well, where the crisis is just ongoing. It peaks from time to time, but the sluggishness that we see in our country and around the world, yes, we're doing better than the rest of the world, but that's like a baseball player hitting 250 and everyone else is hitting 150 when we should be hitting over 300. So it's punk performance all around. So the fever goes up and down, but the fever is still there. And the key is going to be to get the dollar stabilized. I think it should be fixed to gold, and the sooner we do it, the better. But you see it in the bond bubble. There's a bond bubble out there. We had a housing bubble, now we have a bond bubble.
The market is at near record highs, but there doesn't seem to be underlying fundamentals for a bull market. Do you see a potential major sell-off in the cards?
I can't predict timing of markets. No one ever does well with that over time. But we have to keep in mind, even at these current levels, the market in real terms is less than it was 15 years ago. So we've had a lot of ups and downs, but in real terms, we're not even treading water.
Is inflation a threat? And you touched on gold earlier. Where do you see the price of gold heading?
Well, that's in the hands of Janet Yellen, not in the hands of gold miners or anybody else. And that is how much of the money that the Fed has printed it actually allows to go out into the economy. Right now, what the Fed does is print up money, send it to the banks, and then borrows it back from the banks at a very low rate to buy long-term bonds. So right now, the Fed has dammed most of that money up, but when it starts to leak out, then we're going to have major problems, and that's going to be a major challenge for Janet Yellen. And well, who knows when the dam might break, but it's a very, very bad situation that we're facing today.
Last question for you, Mr. Forbes. If investors are worried about the U.S. economy and dollar, what economies around the globe do you see as safe havens for people to invest there?
Well, there is no real safe haven because the commodity boom is tapered off. We have a bond bubble out there. Other countries are not growing as fast as they used to, countries such as Australia, Brazil, and Indonesia, and other countries. So I think the best place to be, even though we're going to have turbulent waters, is right here in the United States. I would not want, you should have some diversification, obviously, around the world, but I would not want to be in a country like India or other countries when things get tough.
All right, Mr. Steve Forbes, as always, great speaking with you. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Kathleen. Appreciate it.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.